The alarm blared through the command center of the UNS Defiance, cutting through the quiet morning shift like a knife. Captain Jake Morrison was in his quarters drinking coffee when the sound reached him. He set down his cup and ran to the bridge, still wearing his old academy shirt. "Report," Jake called out as he entered the command center. The main screen showed nothing but stars and empty space. "Sir, we just picked up a distress signal from the Lyrian system," said Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez from the communication station. His face looked worried. It's bad, Captain." Admiral Lisa Carter appeared on the main screen from Earth Command. Her usually calm face showed deep concern. "Jake, you're the closest ship to the Lyrian Republic. We need you to investigate immediately." Jake nodded. He knew about the Lyrians. They were peaceful people who lived on 3 beautiful worlds far from Earth. They were famous for their advanced medicine and their complete rejection of war. The Lyrians had not built a single warship in over 300 years. "What's the situation, Admiral?" Jake asked, though he could already guess it was nothing good. "The Krex Dominion has invaded Lyrian space," Carter said. The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Everyone in the fleet knew about the Krex. They were insect-like, creatures who traveled from system to system, eating everything in their path. Entire civilizations had vanished after the Krex arrived. Ben turned from his station. "Captain, the signal is coming from Dr. Veldtar on Lyria Prime's moon. He says they have maybe 3 days before complete destruction." Jake stared at the screen. 3 days. The Lyrians had no real defenses, no military ships, no weapons designed for war. They were sitting ducks. "How many Krex ships?" Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Admiral Carter looked at her notes. "Our long-range sensors show over 300 Krex warships surrounding the Lyrian worlds. They've already destroyed 12 outer colonies." The bridge fell silent. 300 ships. Jake looked around at his crew. The Defiance was a good ship with a strong crew, but it was just one vessel. Even with the other ships in their small patrol group, they would be facing impossible odds. "Sir," said Lieutenant Commander Ellen Wright from the navigation station, "our nearest major fleet is 2 weeks away. Even at maximum speed, we can't get reinforcements in time." Jake felt the weight of command pressing down on him. The Lyrians were going to die, and there was almost nothing he could do about it. Almost nothing. "How many ships do we have available?" "Immediately?" he asked. 15 ships, sir," Admiral Carter replied. "The Defiance, the Thunderbolt, the Phoenix, and 12 smaller vessels. It's all we can spare without leaving other systems defenseless. 15 ships against 300. Jake had fought in enough battles to know those odds meant certain death, but he also knew that sitting here and doing nothing meant the death of an entire civilization. Millions of peaceful people who had never hurt anyone. "Admiral, with respect, 15 ships can't stop 300, said Commander Steve Turner from the tactical station. He was stating the obvious, but someone had to say it. "I know the math, Steve," Jake replied, "but we can't just let them die. The Lyrians saved my sister's life with their medical technology. They've helped thousands of humans over the years. We owe them something." Dr. Veltar's voice crackled through the communication system. The universal translator made his words clear, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. "Human ships, please respond. Our people are dying. The Krex harvest ships are consuming our worlds piece by piece. We have no weapons, no defenses. We need help." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his decision was made. "Admiral, request permission to take our small fleet to the Lyrian system." "Permission granted, Captain. I wish I could send you more ships." "We'll make do with what we have," Jake said. "Helm set course for the Lyrian system, maximum speed." "Aye, sir," responded pilot Sarah Johnson. "Course laid in." As the Defiance and its sister ships jumped into hyperspace, Jake gathered his senior staff. In the briefing room, the holographic display showed the Lyrian system. 3 beautiful blue-green worlds surrounded by a cloud of dark Krex ships. "The situation is simple," Jake began. "We're going to try to save 3 worlds from an enemy that outnumbers us 20 to 1. Their ships are larger than ours, and their weapons are stronger. By every logical calculation, we should turn around and go home." The room was quiet. Everyone knew what he was about to say next. "But we're not going home. The Lyrians trusted the galaxy to protect them when they gave up war. They chose peace, science, and healing over weapons and violence. We can't let that choice mean they all have to die. Chief Engineer Maria Gonzalez spoke up. Captain, what's the plan? Direct assault won't work. I don't know yet, Jake admitted. But humans have one thing the Kreks don't expect. We're unpredictable. We think differently. We fight differently. We're going to use that. Lieutenant Alex Hughes, the youngest officer on the ship, raised his hand. Sir, what if we can't save them? Jake looked at each face around the table. These were good people, and he was probably leading them to their deaths. Then we make sure the Kreks pay for every single Lyrian life. And maybe, just maybe, we show the galaxy that some things are worth fighting for, even when you can't win. The hyperspace journey would take 6 hours. 6 hours to plan the impossible. 6 hours to figure out how 15 ships could stand against 300. 6 hours to prepare for a battle that logic said they could never win. But as Jake looked at his determined crew, he felt something the Kreks could never understand. Hope. Stubborn, illogical, human hope. It might not be enough, but it was all they had. The stars streaked past the viewport as they raced toward their destiny. 6 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Lyrian system. What they saw made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The once beautiful system was a battlefield. Lyrian ships, bright silver vessels that looked more like works of art than spacecraft, were being systematically destroyed. Their ships had been built for exploration, trade, and science. They were never meant for war. Against the dark, ugly Kreks warships, they looked like butterflies fighting wolves. My God, whispered Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez. Look at them all. The Kreks fleet was enormous. Hundreds of dark ships surrounded the 3 Lyrian worlds like hungry insects. The Kreks vessels were covered in what looked like black armor made from some kind of living material. They moved in perfect coordination like parts of a single creature. Sir, I'm picking up massive energy readings from those large ships in the center, reported Commander Steve Turner from the tactical station. They're not just attacking, they're eating the planets. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the main screen. Steve was right. The largest Krek ships had extended massive tubes down to the surface of one of the outer worlds. As he watched, chunks of the planet were being sucked up into the ships. The Kreks weren't just conquering the Lyrians. They were literally consuming their worlds. Captain, we're being hailed, Ben announced. Put it through, Jake ordered. The face of a Lyrian appeared on the screen. Dr. Veltar looked exhausted and frightened. His blue skin was pale, and his large, gentle eyes showed pain Jake had never seen before. Human Captain, thank you for coming. I am Dr. Veltar, Chief Scientist of Lyria Prime. Our situation is desperate. Doctor, I'm Captain Morrison. We're here to help. What's your status? Dr. Veltar's image flickered. We've lost contact with 8 more colonies in the past hour. The Kreks have surrounded our main worlds. Their harvest ships are destroying everything. We estimate we have less than 72 hours before total annihilation. Jake felt the weight of those words. 72 hours. 3 days to save an entire civilization with just 15 ships. Doctor, what defenses do you have? Jake asked, though he suspected the answer. None that can fight these creatures. We have orbital platforms designed to deflect asteroids and comets, some mining lasers, a few police patrol boats. We abolished warfare 3 centuries ago, Captain. We believed the galaxy had moved beyond such barbarism. Jake could hear the regret in the alien's voice. The Lyrians had chosen peace, and now that choice might kill them all. Sir, Lieutenant Commander Ellen Wright called from her station. I'm getting readings from the moon of Lyria Prime. There's some kind of complex there. That is our main research facility, Dr. Veltar explained. Many of our top scientists are there, including myself. We're trying to coordinate evacuations, but our ships are too slow. The Kreks destroy them as soon as they leave orbit. Jake made a quick decision. Doctor, we're going to get our people to you. Lieutenant Alex Hughes, prep the Falcon, take a small team and get to that research facility. Yes, sir, Alex replied, already moving toward the door. Jake turned back to Dr. Veltar. We need information about the Kreks. Everything you've learned. The Lyrian scientist nodded. Captain, we've discovered something important. The Kreks don't think individually like we do. They operate through some kind of shared mind, but there are limits to this connection. This was the first good news Jake had heard. What kind of limits? Their coordination comes from special ships they keep in the center of their fleets. We call them node ships. They're larger than the others and have very different energy signatures. If those ships are damaged, the others seem to lose coordination. Commander Steve Turner leaned forward. Like a computer network? Similar, yes, but more organic, more alive. Jake felt his mind racing. If the Kreks worked like a hive mind, then maybe there was a way to disrupt that mind. But first they needed to get their people to safety and gather more information. Colonel Pete Barnes, Jake called to his Special Operations Commander. Take your team and help evacuate civilians from the outer colonies. Use the fast ships. Understood, Captain, Barnes replied through the communicator. Meanwhile, Alex Hughes had launched in the Falcon, a small scout ship designed for stealth and speed. As Jake watched the ship disappear toward Lyria Prime's moon, he hoped the young pilot would make it through the Kreks lines. Captain, Chief Engineer Maria Gonzalez approached him. I've been looking at the sensor data. Those Kreks ships, they're not just metal and technology. Parts of them seem to be alive. Organic. Jake nodded. It made sense. The Kreks were insects after all. They probably grew their ships instead of building them. Maria, what's our tactical situation? Honestly? The engineer looked grim. 15 ships against over 300. Their ships are larger, more heavily armed, and they have those harvest ships that could probably take apart our largest vessel. Conventionally, we can't win. I said honestly, not optimistically. Jake said with a tired smile. That was honest, sir. Conventionally, we can't win. But humans have never been conventional. On the main screen, they watched as another Lyrian ship was destroyed, its elegant hull cracking under Kreks' weapons fire. Jake clenched his fists. Every minute they spent analyzing the situation, more innocent people died. Sir, I have an idea, said Lieutenant Commander Danny Foster, the ship's stealth specialist. What if we don't fight them conventionally? What if we make them come to us? Jake turned to him. Explain. The Kreks move in perfect formation. They expect enemies to either run or attack directly. What if we do neither? What if we make them break formation to chase us? It wasn't much of a plan yet, but it was something. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. These people had followed him into impossible situations before. They were about to do it again. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. We're outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations. But we're not here to win a fair fight. We're here to save people who can't save themselves. We're going to show the Kreks what humans do when someone threatens the innocent. As if to emphasize his words, another Lyrian ship exploded in the distance, its light briefly illuminating the darkness of space before fading forever. Lieutenant Alex Hughes guided the Falcon through the debris field around Lyria Prime's moon. His ship was small enough to slip between the larger Kreks vessels without being noticed. He held his breath as a massive Kreks destroyer passed overhead, its living hull pulsing with strange patterns of light. The research facility was built inside the moon itself, protected by layers of rock and metal. As Alex docked, he was met by Dr. Veltar and several other Lyrian scientists. Their laboratory was filled with screens showing data about the Kreks ships. Captain Morrison sent me to get more information about these node ships, Alex explained. Dr. Veltar led him to a large display. We've learned much in the past few hours, though it has cost us dearly. The Kreks' hive mind is more complex than we first thought. On the screen, Alex could see a detailed scan of one of the larger Kreks ships. Unlike the others, this one had strange antenna-like growths all over its surface. These are the node ships, Dr. Veltar continued. They control groups of approximately 30 to 40 regular ships. But here's what's interesting. Each node ship must stay in constant contact with the others. If that contact is broken, The entire network becomes confused. Alex studied the data. What happens if we destroy one? The ships it controls become lost for several minutes. They stop coordinating with others. But the other node ships quickly take over control. We need to disrupt multiple nodes at the same time. Meanwhile, back on the Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison was meeting with his senior officers. The war room felt tense as everyone stared at the tactical display showing the Krek's fleet. "The problem is simple," said Commander Steve Turner. "We can't fight them head-on. Their ships are too big, too strong, and there are too many of them." "Then we don't fight them head-on," Jake replied. "Steve, you used to work in cyber warfare. What did you learn about fighting superior enemies?" Steve thought for a moment. "You don't attack their strength, you attack their weakness. You make them react to you instead of following their plan." "Exactly. The Kreks expect enemies to either run away or attack in formation. What they don't expect is chaos." Chief Engineer Maria Gonzalez leaned forward. "What kind of chaos, Captain?" Jake smiled grimly. "The kind only humans can create." "Maria, can your people work with Lyrian technology?" "Their medical and energy systems are actually very advanced. With some modifications." "Good. I want you to take a team to the Lyrian research facility, work with their scientists, see if we can combine our technology with theirs." Lieutenant Commander Ellen Wright spoke up. "Sir, what about their evacuation ships? The Kreks destroy them as soon as they leave orbit. That's where we come in." "Colonel Barnes, how's the civilian evacuation going?" Colonel Pete Barnes appeared on the communication screen from one of the outer colonies. Behind him, Jake could see Lyrian families boarding human transport ships. "We've rescued about 2,000 people so far, Captain. But every trip is getting more dangerous. The Kreks are starting to target the evacuation routes." Jake nodded. "Keep at it, Pete. We'll buy you time." After the briefing, Jake found himself alone with Dr. Veltar on a private channel. The Lyrian scientist looked exhausted. "Captain, I must ask you something that troubles me," Dr. Veltar said. "Why are you here? Your fleet is small. Logic says you should have turned away." Jake considered the question. "Doctor, my species learned something long ago. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about logic. It's about who we choose to be. Even when it means your death?" "Especially then." 3 hours later, Maria Gonzalez contacted Jake from the research facility. Her voice was excited. "Captain, you need to see this. The Lyrians have developed something incredible." Jake took a shuttle to the moon base, accompanied by Steve Turner and several other officers. Dr. Veltar met them at the entrance, looking more hopeful than before. In the main laboratory, Maria stood next to a strange device that seemed to be part human technology and part something else. "We've combined Lyrian neural interface technology with our electronic warfare systems," Maria explained. "The Lyrians use this technology for their advanced medicine, but we've found another use." "What does it do?" Steve asked. Dr. Veltar activated the device. On the screen, they could see the Krek's fleet, but now there were new lines connecting. The ships, streams of energy flowing between the node ships. "It can detect and disrupt the Krek's communication network," Dr. Veltar said. "We call them neural disruptors." Jake stared at the display. "Can we use these to break their coordination permanently?" "Not permanently," Maria admitted. "But we can create periods of confusion. Maybe 10 to 15 minutes at a time." "That might be enough," Steve said thoughtfully. "If we can time our attacks during the disruption, there's more." Dr. Veltar interrupted. "We've discovered something about Krek's behavior. When individual ships lose contact with the hive mind, they default to simple patterns. They become predictable." Jake felt hope rising in his chest. "How many disruptors can you make? With the materials we have?" "Maybe 6, Maria replied. "And our pilots? Can they adapt to chaotic attack patterns?" Lieutenant Commander Danny Foster, who had just arrived from his stealth mission, stepped forward. "Captain, I've been studying Krek's movement patterns. They're like a dance. Perfect, coordinated, beautiful, but they can't handle improvisation." Jake gathered his team around the tactical display. "Here's what we're going to do. We're going to break every rule of space combat. No formations, no coordinated attacks, no predictable patterns. He pointed to different sections of the Krex fleet. Sarah Johnson will lead our fighters in random attack patterns. No two pilots follow the same route. Tony Clark will modify our weapons to create maximum confusion. Jake turned to the group. The Krex fight like a machine. They expect enemies to fight like machines too. But we're not machines. We're humans. We improvise. We adapt. We do stupid, illogical things that somehow work. Dr. Veltar looked puzzled. Captain, this sounds like controlled madness. No, Doctor, Jake replied with a grin. This is uncontrolled madness, and that's exactly what's going to save your people. As if responding to his words, alerts began sounding throughout the facility. On the screens, they could see Krex ships moving toward the research moon. They've found us, someone called out. Jake looked at his team. Then it's time to show them what human madness looks like. Everyone to your ships. Let's give the Krex something they've never seen before. The real battle was about to begin. The battle began at dawn, Lyrian system time. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, watching as his small fleet spread out in what looked like complete chaos. To any military observer, it would seem like madness. Ships flew in random directions, fighters broke off from their groups, and no one followed standard attack patterns. All ships initiate pattern break tactics, Jake announced over the communication system. Remember, the moment you start being predictable, you're dead. The Krex fleet responded exactly as expected. The massive hive mind tried to adapt to the human tactics, but it kept failing. The node ships sent commands for coordinated responses, but the human ships had already moved somewhere else. Commander Ashley Davis led Fighting Group Alpha against the main Krex force. Her ship, the UNS Thunderbolt, dove straight toward the largest Krex vessel, then suddenly veered off at the last second, confusing the enemy targeting systems. This is insane, her tactical officer called out as plasma bolts flew past their ship. Exactly the point, Ashley replied, spinning her ship in a barrel roll that no military manual would ever recommend. The crazier we look, the harder we are to predict. Meanwhile, on the other side of the battle, Captain Ryan O'Neill conducted hit-and-run attacks with Fighting Group Beta. His ships would appear from behind asteroids, fire everything they had, then disappear before the Krex could respond. Target those supply ships, Ryan ordered his pilots. Make them waste resources chasing us instead of attacking Lyrians. But the real action was happening deep in enemy territory. Lieutenant Commander Danny Foster piloted the modified freighter Aurora through the Krex lines. His ship looked like a harmless cargo vessel, but inside it carried the neural disruptors Maria Gonzalez had created. Danny, you're getting close to the first node ship, came Maria's voice over the radio. She was monitoring his progress from the research facility. Danny looked at his screen. The Krex node ship was enormous, covered in the organic antenna growths that controlled the hive mind network. I see it. Beginning approach. The Aurora slipped between two regular Krex destroyers, its stealth systems keeping it hidden. Danny had to fly perfectly. One wrong move and hundreds of Krex ships would turn him into space dust. Deploying disruptor, Danny announced as he released the first device. The neural disruptor attached itself to the node ship's hull like a metallic parasite. Immediately, the effects were visible. The 40 ships controlled by that node ship suddenly stopped their coordinated movements. They began flying in slow circles, as if they had forgotten what they were supposed to be doing. It's working, Jake called out from the Defiance. All ships focus fire on the confused group. Human fighters, led by Lieutenant Sarah Johnson, swarmed the disoriented Krex ships. Without coordination, the enemy vessels were like individual insects rather than parts of a swarm. This is incredible, Sarah radioed as her fighter squadron destroyed 3 Krex ships in minutes. They don't know how to fight alone. But the celebration was short-lived. The other node ships quickly compensated, taking control of the lost vessels. The window of confusion lasted only 12 minutes, before the Krex fleet was coordinated again. Danny, get to the next node ship, Jake ordered. Deep inside enemy lines, Danny was in trouble. The Aurora had been spotted. Krex fighters swarmed around his ship, their weapons charging. I'm taking heavy fire, Danny reported, his ship shaking, as enemy plasma hit the shields. Port shield is failing. Hold on, Danny, came the voice of Lieutenant Karen Mills. She led a squadron of human fighters in a desperate rescue mission. We're coming for you. Karen's fighters dove into the enemy formation, their guns blazing. The Kreks, still thinking like a hive mind, tried to coordinate their response. But Karen's pilots flew like maniacs, weaving between enemy ships in patterns that defied logic. "This is Falcon 6, called one of her pilots. I'm going to ram that fighter." "Negative, Falcon 6. That's suicide." "Sometimes suicide is the best tactic, ma'am." The pilot deliberately crashed his damaged fighter into a Krek ship, destroying both. It was exactly the kind of unpredictable individual decision that the hive mind couldn't understand or counter. Danny managed to deploy 2 more neural disruptors before his ship was too damaged to continue. As the Aurora limped back toward friendly lines, sections of the Krek's fleet fell into confusion again. On the Lyria Prime research moon, Dr. Veltar and Tony Clark worked frantically to create more disruptors. Lyrian scientists who had spent their lives studying medicine were now helping build weapons of war. "The neural patterns are fascinating," Dr. Veltar observed as he studied the Krek's network. "It's like disrupting a brain, but a brain made of ships." "Can we make the disruptions last longer?" Tony asked, welding together human electronics and Lyrian biotechnology. "Perhaps, but we would need to get the disruptors closer to the primary node ship, the one controlling all the others." Back in space, the battle was taking its toll. The UNS Thunderbolt had lost its starboard engine and was venting atmosphere. 2 of the smaller human ships had been destroyed and several others were badly damaged. But the Kreks were suffering too. Their perfect formations were constantly broken by human unpredictability. Ships that were meant to support each other found themselves isolated. The hive mind's biggest strength had become a weakness. "Captain," called Commander Steve Turner from the tactical station, "I'm detecting something big coming out of hyperspace." On the main screen, space twisted and a massive shape appeared. It was larger than any ship in the battle, larger than anything the humans had ever seen. The creature ship looked like a giant insect made of metal and living tissue. "My God," whispered Jake. "What is that thing?" Dr. Veltar's voice crackled over the communicator, filled with fear. "That is the Overlord, the primary consciousness of the Kreks. Captain, if that creature reaches our worlds, nothing will survive." The tide of battle had turned again. Just when the humans thought they had found a way to win, the real enemy had arrived. The Overlord began moving toward Lyria Prime, and Jake could feel the hope draining from his crew. But then he remembered something his father had told him long ago. When things look impossible, that's when humans do their best work. Jake keyed the ship-wide communication system. "All ships, all crews, the big boss just arrived. Time to show it how humans finish a fight." The Overlord moved toward Lyria Prime like a living mountain in space. Its massive bioship body was covered in eyes, tentacles, and weapon ports. As it flew, it extended huge tubes toward the planet's surface and began consuming everything it touched. "Sir, it's eating the planet," reported Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez, his voice shaking. "At this rate, Lyria Prime will be gone in 4 hours." Captain Jake Morrison watched in horror as whole cities disappeared into the creature's maw. Millions of Lyrians lived on that world. They had to be stopped. "Captain," Admiral Lisa Carter's voice came through from Earth Command. "Our ships are evacuating civilians from the other worlds, but there are still 10 million Lyrians on the surface of Lyria Prime." Jake looked at his tactical display. The Defiance was damaged, his fleet was scattered, and they were facing something the size of a small moon. But he had an idea. "Steve, can we modify our fusion reactor?" Jake asked his tactical officer. Commander Steve Turner looked confused. "Modify it how, sir?" "Turn it into the biggest bomb in the galaxy." The bridge fell silent. Everyone understood what Jake was suggesting. To get close enough to the Overlord to make it work, someone would have to fly straight into the creature's body. It would be suicide. "Captain," Chief Engineer Maria Gonzalez said through the communicator from the engine room. "Theoretically, yes, but whoever pilots that ship won't be coming back." "I'll do it," Jake said simply. "Sir, no. protested Lieutenant Commander Ellen Wright. "Let me take a smaller ship. You're needed here." "Ellen, it has to be the Defiance. We have the biggest reactor." Jake turned to the crew. "I'm not ordering anyone to come with me. This is volunteer only." To his surprise, not a single person left the bridge. Communications Officer Bobby Kim spoke for all of them. "Captain, we've come this far together. We finish it together." Jake felt proud of his crew, but also sad. These good people were about to die because of his decision. But if they didn't try, billions would die anyway. "Maria, how long to modify the reactor?" 20 minutes, sir." 20 minutes. Jake looked at the display showing the Overlord consuming Lyria Prime. They might not have 20 minutes. "Lieutenant Sandra Walsh," Jake called to the fighter squadron leader. "Take all remaining fighters. I need you to clear us a path to that thing." "Yes, sir." "All fighters, follow me. We're going to give the captain a clear shot." The human fighters flew toward the massive Overlord like tiny insects attacking a giant. The creature's defensive weapons were enormous, but the human pilots flew in such unpredictable patterns that most shots missed. Lieutenant Karen Mills dove her fighter directly at one of the Overlord's eyes. She fired everything she had before pulling away at the last second. That got its attention. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Commander Danny Foster sat in the Aurora's medical bay, being treated for injuries from his earlier mission. But when he heard Jake's plan, he struggled to his feet. "Captain, wait," Danny called over the radio. "I found something during my reconnaissance. The Overlord has a weak spot." "What kind of weak spot?" "There's a chamber inside its body. My sensors showed it during my escape. It looks like some kind of nerve center. If you can get the ship inside and detonate near that spot." Jake nodded. It was still a suicide mission, but at least now it might actually work. "All right, people, you heard the man. We're going inside that thing." Dr. Veltar's voice came through from the research facility. "Captain Morrison, on behalf of all Lyrians, I want you to know that your sacrifice will never be forgotten." "Doctor, just make sure you use your second chance wisely," Jake replied. The Defiance flew toward the Overlord, its hull glowing from the radiation of the modified reactor. The creature's weapons fired at them, but the human fighters kept the worst of the fire away from the larger ship. As they approached, Jake could see the Overlord's surface more clearly. It was alive, pulsing with bioelectric energy. And there, at the front of the creature, was what looked like a mouth large enough to swallow a space station. "That's our way in," Jake announced. "Sir," called Medical Officer Linda Ross from the rear of the bridge. "Are we really flying into that thing's mouth?" "Doctor, has anyone ever told you that human beings are crazy?" "Many times, Captain." They were right. The Defiance flew straight toward the massive mouth. As they got closer, Jake could see teeth the size of buildings and a throat that disappeared into darkness. The smell of the creature somehow penetrated their ship's filters, a mixture of metal, flesh, and decay. They flew into the Overlord's body like Jonah entering the whale. Inside, the walls were covered with organic machinery, pulsing veins of energy and strange lights. It was like flying through the nervous system of a giant creature. "Following Danny's directions," Ellen reported. "The nerve center should be 2 kilometers deeper inside." As they flew through the creature's internal passages, they saw the truth of what the Kreks were. This wasn't just a ship or even a creature. It was a living factory, constantly creating new Kreks warriors from the matter it consumed. "No wonder they keep growing stronger," whispered Steve Turner. "They turn everything they eat into more soldiers." Finally, they reached a vast chamber. In the center was a brain-like organ the size of a football stadium, covered in neural pathways that glowed with energy. "That's it," Jake announced. "That's what controls them all." "Fusion reactor ready for detonation," Maria reported. 30 seconds until overload. Jake activated the ship's communication system one last time. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the UNS Defiance to all ships. It has been an honor serving with you. Tell Earth that we did our duty." The final seconds counted down. Around them, the Overlord's immune system finally realized what was happening. Krek soldiers began pouring into the chamber, trying to stop them. 10 seconds, Maria called out. Jake looked at his crew one last time. Thank you all for everything. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The fusion reactor exploded. The blast tore through the Overlord's nerve center, destroying the brain that controlled the entire Krex network. The creature's death scream echoed through space as its massive body convulsed and died. Across the system, every Krex ship suddenly stopped moving. Without the Overlord's control, they drifted silently in space. Some of the smaller ones actually came online with individual consciousness for the first time in their lives. The battle was over. Humanity had won through sacrifice, chaos, and the willingness to do the impossible. 3 months later, Admiral Lisa Carter stood in a memorial garden on the rebuilt Lyria Prime. The names of all the humans who died in the battle were carved in stone, with Captain Jake Morrison's name at the top. Dr. Veltar approached her carrying a small Lyrian flower. Admiral, your people saved us all. We will never forget their sacrifice. They did what humans always do, Doctor. They stood up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. As Carter looked up at the stars, she smiled. Somewhere out there, human and Lyrian children were playing together, learning together, growing up in a universe made safer by the sacrifice of brave people who refused to let evil win. The Krex were gone. Hope had returned. And the galaxy was a better place, because sometimes being outnumbered, outgunned, and hopeless isn't enough to stop humanity from doing what's right.